English teacher way back when. But
Alright.
anyway, go ahead with your questions. That's the
Okay.
important thing.
So, you good? How are you doing today?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing all right. I've had better days. My grandson's been sick, and I've been taking care of him. So I think, to be honest, he's had a severe cold, and I think I've kind of I'm starting to catch it. Unfortunately,
think so?
he's doing a lot better, but I
Yeah.
think I'm starting to come down.
How long has you had it?
He's had it about a week and a half,
A week and a half?
but he's really sick. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I had a cold not too long ago. It lasted about a week and a half,
Uh-huh.
2 weeks.
Yeah, well, I guess that's what I have to look forward to over the next week and a
Yeah.
half or two.
Okay. What steps did you take to get to where you are now?
That is an interesting question. I grew up in Encinitas, which is about maybe 30 miles north of here, and in a single parent family. My mom raised 3 kids, and I love sports. I participated in sports.
What sports?
Football was
Football?
my best sport. I was pretty good in football, but
Where'd
I
you
ran.
play? Running
I
back?
ran track. Mostly running back and defensive
Yeah.
back, but I also played basketball, and I ran track, and I played baseball. So just about all sports,
Yeah.
and I enjoyed it. And I was a fairly decent student, and I can't really explain that. I mean, because my mom was working all the time, and she
Yeah.
pretty much left the 3 kids, the 3 of us, on our own to do our own thing. And I did well in school, attended school. I could have cut very
Yeah.
easily or
Yeah.
ditched, to be honest, as one of my brothers did frequently.
Were you the youngest of the 3?
I was the oldest.
You were the oldest?
Yeah.
So did you step up to take responsibility to take care of them, or
Uh,
did you all kind of just do your own
Not
thing?
really. I guess I was the most responsible of the 3, but to be honest, we all kind of went our own ways.
Yeah.
You know, they did their own thing, but I'd say that I did decently in school. I wasn't outstanding in high school. I mean, I was a good student.
Yeah.
I'd say a B student, if
Passing
you will.
grades?
Yeah, I had good grades, and
Yeah.
I went to school, and I enjoyed sports. So I was hoping I could get a sports scholarship somewhere to go to college.
Yeah.
And it didn't work out. I wasn't big enough, fast enough, or good enough to get a scholarship. But surprisingly, I applied. It was suggested that I might apply for an academic scholarship. So I took a bunch of tests, and I ended up getting it. So when I graduated from high school, when I was 17, I graduated from high school, and my mom said, "Son, I wish you luck, but what you do is you're on your own." And I said, "Well, I think I'll go to college." She said, "Great, good luck. I can't really help you out financially. It's going to be up to you." So I ended up going to San Diego State. I was young, about 17, which is kind of young for a
Yeah.
freshman, but I started there, and then I worked part-time, and I worked my way through college. And as a matter of fact, my grades improved, surprisingly. I worked really hard,
Yeah.
and my grades went initially, it was a shock as a freshman when I first went to San Diego State, because I was used to getting in B's mostly and A's occasionally. But there, I'd say an A was worth like a C, because the level of competition
Yeah.
is much more difficult, and everybody that goes to a 4-year college is smart.
Yeah.
It's just that some have the work habits and some don't. Some have the motivation and some don't.
I hear doing homework there isn't mandatory. It's just practice for tests and quizzes.
It depends on the assignments, but I'd say that there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
I think you're wise to do it, because if you don't, it's going to leave big gaps in your learning,
Yeah.
and you're going to go in to take tests, and if you haven't done the prep and so forth, you're not going to do well, and eventually you will not pass the course.
Yeah.
And ultimately not graduate. So I discovered, I think my first year as a freshman was really difficult, because I had to learn to study really, really hard. So when I was working and I got a job washing dishes, and I'd have to report there at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and then I worked till usually 9 or 10 until the restaurant closed.
Wow.
And then I'd go home, or I'd go back to where I was living. I did homework and studied and prepped for the next day to start school at 8 o'clock in the morning. And it just, I think I was somewhat fortunate. Things kind of fell into
Yeah, it
place.
just worked out.
Yeah. So anyway, that was probably the long version of a short answer that you wanted, but that's me.
It's all right. No problem. When would you say you knew what you wanted to do with your life?
That's a tough question. I thought being a teacher might be kind of interesting. I had a couple of friends that were going into education, and my mom thought that might be interesting, a way to go. I didn't really know though, but I started to work harder in school, put more time in, and get better grades. And during this time, this was the 60s, and there was a war going on, the Vietnam War,
Oh, yeah.
and there was a draft. So if you were of age between, I think, 18 and 32, and you were male,
Yeah.
you were given a draft number. And they had a draft lottery, and if they picked your number, you would go. And if you were in college and doing well, you could. They would waive it until you graduated. So long story short, I kind of knew that sooner or later my number was going to come up, and I decided that I looked at myself and the things I liked to do, and I tried to go to join the Air Force as a pilot. And I took their tests,
Yeah.
and I passed the mental tests. I did not pass the physical. I passed the physical exam that required you to do push-ups and sit-ups and runs and all that. But I did not pass the eye examination, so the Air Force would not accept me as a pilot. And they said, you might want to try the Marines. So I applied to the Marines, and I passed the test. And they waived my vision, and they said, you're going to have to, when you go to training, you're going to have to be in excellent physical condition. You better start working out.
Mm-hmm.
So I started running with a pack, with a 40-pound pack on my back. I'd run at least 3 miles a day. I started doing that. I was doing about 100 push-ups a day, 100 sit-ups. I was lifting weights. I was doing, I was on a treadmill, I remember, and doing all these kinds of, eating healthy and trying to bulk up. Like right now, I'm about 150 pounds. My peak in the Marine Corps, I'd say I was up to about 185, so about 35 pounds more, and it was all muscle. I mean, I was pretty solid. And even now at my age, I still work out, but I'm not really very strong, to be honest. I'd say I thought that maybe I might want to do something. I didn't want to just graduate from college and go out into the workforce. I wanted to do something different. So I thought maybe going into the service might be good for me. And the Marines, I enjoyed the Marine Corps. The training was tough. I got into Ranger. I became a recon ranger. My physical fitness scores were really high.
Yeah.
And they suggested, hey, I was invited to go to recon school. They said, we think you do well. And then I learned all about teamwork and working together to accomplish a goal.
Mm.
So we'd have small teams of maybe 4 to 6 people, and everybody had multiple jobs. And you had a mission and a goal, or goals to accomplish. And the only way you could do it was to work together to do it. And so I learned to work as a team, but I had a sense of that when I was in high school when I played sports, team sports.
Yeah.
So you learn that, that you have to work together and that everybody's got a role on the team. Like I wasn't the best shooter on the basketball team, but I was very fast, and I was a good defensive player. And actually, surprisingly, I got my share of rebounds even as a guard, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
And, so we all have to find out what our strengths are, and we have to use them. to move forward to accomplish the goal.
To accomplish a common goal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. How do you balance your work and personal life?
I've been, I think, negligent in probably putting more of my self into my work than my personal life. I have 3 daughters, and I guess long story short, I joined the Marines. I enjoyed it, went to Vietnam, and spent a full tour in combat there, and that was an experience. And I was married. I got married, and to a woman, Karen, who was a teacher, and we ended up having, I'd say about every couple of years, I'd move to a different duty station, and my wife did not, if they were stateside duty stations, she'd move with me.
Yeah.
If they were overseas, she wouldn't. So she would take the girls, and I had 3 daughters, and she ended up, we moved here to San Diego, and she loved San Diego, and she wanted to stay here. So she stayed here, and I spent most of my time overseas in different locations,
Okay.
different duty stations, all the way from Japan to Okinawa to, Vietnam to the Philippines.
Yeah.
I could go on, and some stateside duty stations too. So I ended up spending 19 years in the Marine Corps. I'd not planned on doing that,
Wow.
but I enjoyed it. And my wife was leery, and she more or less asked me not to go back to a war zone, if at all possible. Wanted me to get out of the Marines, but I decided, I talked her into allowing me to stay in until I could retire.
Yeah.
Because when you put in, well, usually it's 20 years. I got an early out, and then you have a retirement for life.
Yeah, that's what I hear.
So
That's what I'm planning on.
Yeah, so that's what I did,
Mhm.
and I got out. My wife was a teacher, and I was young. I was only 39.
Wow.
Which is, yeah. And she said, what are you going to do with the rest of your life, And she said, why don't you go back to college and get a teaching credential, and you can teach.
Yeah, because I hear they pay for college
Yeah,
when you
they
get
did.
out.
They did. And not only that, but we ended up buying another house, and through the VA, and they paid for, I bought a house for a very, very low interest rate, and no down,
Wow.
no down payment at all. At this, you may or may not understand that, but I mean, that's a big thing. So we ended up buying a house in Claremont, here in San Diego, and I worked out. I think it worked out well for me. I think I was lucky. I think luck played a part, but so forth. Anyway.
Could you go into detail on some of your combat stories if you want to?
I kind of rather not, but I can just say that it was tough. It was I was up on the DMZ area, and most of my missions were went through the S2, which is intelligence.
Mhm.
So we would go out on missions with 4 to 6 people, and they tell us what to do. It could be a prisoner snatch. Most of it was gathering what they called intelligence.
Yeah.
So we'd have all of our gear strapped on, which was heavy, usually 80, 90 pounds of gear.
Wow.
You'd have to be in good shape.
Yeah.
I mean, you had to be tough, and you had to be in good shape. And they'd prep you and tell you where you had to go. And usually a helicopter would come in, and we'd be out on the LZ, the landing zone, and the helicopter would take us to a general location, and we'd either have to rappel in with ropes. We'd throw ropes out over the side and rappel in, or the chopper would hover 6 to 10 feet off the ground or whatever, and then we'd jump out of the chopper. It wouldn't want to set down because
Yeah.
of the fear of mines. And so we'd jump out, and then we'd usually do a 5 to 7 day patrol. And our job was to avoid the enemy
Yeah.
and to gather information, as much information as we could. Many of our missions had to do with like monitoring trails,
Mhm.
enemy trails coming down from the north, from North Vietnam. like the Ho Chi Minh Trail.
Yeah.
And we'd maybe sit there for a while, and we'd take information down, like the number of troops that would pass, the weapons they were carrying, the gear they were carrying, their numbers, whether or not there were vehicles or they were on foot, a variety of different things. And then we would go back, we'd set up an extraction point, and we'd move to a location, and then we'd call the chopper in. The chopper would come in and get us, and we'd set up a perimeter, and we'd usually just dive into the chopper, face first, and the chopper would just hover quickly. You dive in, and it would just take off quickly. And if you were doing what you were supposed to be doing, hopefully you would survive it. And then we'd go back to home base, if you will, and they debrief us and ask us all kinds of questions about what we saw, what we didn't see, and sometimes questions about things that had nothing to do with our mission.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy the dying part, because there were casualties. Fortunately, I wasn't one of them, but I lost a lot of friends over there. And that's what happens in combat, and you have to be able to kind of deal with that and go on and do what you have to do to be successful. So.
Okay. All right, next question. All right. Could you look back on the first 10 years after college? Is there anything that you would do differently?
That's an interesting question.